What if the biggest mistake of your life leads you to the one person who sees the real you? The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the Willow Creek station as the September sun dipped low over the Wyoming prairie. Dust rose around the wheels like a golden cloud, catching the last light of day. Carrick Montgomery stood tall on the wooden platform, his weathered Stetson pulled low against the glare. His heart thudded in his chest as he watched the coach settle, the horses snorting after the long journey from Cheyenne. Today was the day he would meet the woman who had agreed to be his wife. He checked his pocket watch for the 5th time, then brushed his fingers over his trimmed beard to steady himself. 5 years of living alone on a quiet ranch had made him good at silence, not small talk. But he hoped he wasn't too rusty for a first meeting with a mail-order bride. The driver hopped down, stretching out his back. "Long ride," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Your bride's in there. Didn't say a word the whole trip." Quote. Carrick nodded, though nervousness twisted in his stomach. His letters to Miss Amelia Foster had been brief and practical. She was a schoolteacher from Boston seeking a new life. He respected her courage for coming so far. He'd expected a sensible woman, steady and calm. But when the coach door swung open, a small gloved hand appeared first. Then came the hem of a dusty blue traveling dress. And then Amelia Foster stepped into view, her face streaked with tears. Her bonnet shaded her eyes, but not enough to hide the redness around them. Her hands shook as she clutched a small case against her chest, like she was afraid of losing it. Her breath hitched, and she tried to steady herself, but fresh tears rolled down her cheeks before she could stop them. Carrick froze. He had imagined a nervous woman, a shy one, maybe even a serious one, but not a woman who looked like her whole world had fallen apart on the way here. "Miss Foster," he said softly, removing his hat. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Mr. Montgomery." Quote. Around them, travelers bustled past, glancing curiously at the strange scene. Amelia wiped at her eyes with a handkerchief that was already damp from earlier crying. Her voice trembled. "I apologize. This is not how I wanted our first meeting to be." Carrick stepped closer and gently guided her to a bench away from prying eyes. He knelt down enough to meet her gaze and pulled out a clean handkerchief from his pocket. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said. "Whatever's wrong, you don't have to hide it." Her eyes widened a little, surprised by his tone. She hadn't expected kindness, not from a stranger waiting to marry her. "You're very kind," she whispered, pressing the clean handkerchief to her face. "I fear I may have made a terrible mistake." Carrick felt a tight pull in his chest. He'd heard stories of brides who saw their new husbands and fled on the next coach east. He tried to keep his voice steady. "If it's me, if I'm not what you expected." "No," she interrupted quickly, shaking her head. "It's not you." She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Could we speak somewhere private?" Carrick didn't ask questions. He just picked up her trunk and placed it in his wagon. When he helped her climb up beside him, he felt her trembling through her gloves. "My home is 4 miles out," he said. "We can talk there. Or I can take you back to the hotel." "Your home is fine," Amelia whispered. "Thank you." The wagon rolled through Willow Creek, past the general store, the saloon, the blacksmith, and the dusty main street. Amelia looked around with worried eyes. Everything was unfamiliar, rough, wide, and open. Nothing like Boston. Once they reached open land, she finally spoke. "I lied to you, Mr. Montgomery." Carrick didn't look at her right away. He focused on the road, giving her space to speak. "About what exactly?" "In my letters," she said, twisting the handkerchief in her hands. "I didn't tell you the truth about why I left Boston." The wagon bumped over a rut, and she grabbed the seat to steady herself. "I told you I was a schoolteacher, which is true. But I didn't leave my position willingly. The headmaster's son, he took an interest in me. When I refused him, he told his father I behaved inappropriately with him." Carrick's jaw tightened. "They believed him?" She nodded, voice breaking. "My reputation was ruined. No school would hire me again. No family would take me in. People whispered whenever I walked by." She swallowed hard. "So I answered your advertisement because I wanted a new beginning, but I was afraid you wouldn't choose me if you knew." The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise, a modest, well-kept home with a wide porch, a barn, and open pasture land glowing in the evening light. Amelia looked at it with fear and hope mixing in her eyes. "I understand if you want to send me back," she whispered. "I can take the next coach east." "I won't be angry." Carrick slowed the horses as they approached the yard. Rusty, his eager farm dog, barked happily at the new arrival. Carrick turned to Amelia and spoke quietly. "I'm not a man who judges by gossip," he said. "What matters to me is who you are now, and whether you meant what you wrote about wanting a real partnership." She blinked hard, her breath catching. "I did, I truly did." He nodded once. "Then let's get you settled." He helped her down from the wagon. Her hand was small and cold in his, but she didn't pull away. Rusty trotted up, tail wagging. Amelia reached out with a trembling hand, and for the first time since she arrived, a tiny hint of calm touched her face. Inside the house, Carrick lit a lantern and stepped aside. "It's not fancy," he said, "but it's honest." Amelia stood still in the doorway, taking in the warm glow of the hearth, the sturdy furniture, the books on the shelves, and the clean, welcoming space he had prepared for her. "It's lovely," she said quietly, "truly." As Carrick watched her, he realized something he hadn't expected. He wanted her to stay. Not because he needed help on the ranch, but because something in her eyes, even filled with fear and tears, felt like the beginning of something that could change both their lives. Amelia hardly slept that first night, lying awake in the warm little room Carrick had prepared for her. The new curtains, the fresh quilt, even the small vase of wildflowers he had picked made her chest tighten with a feeling she couldn't name. She wasn't used to someone thinking of her comfort. Not in Boston, not after the scandal, not in months. Morning sunlight filtered through the window before she finally drifted into a shallow sleep. When she woke again, the house was quiet. She hurried downstairs, afraid she'd kept Carrick waiting on her very first morning. But instead, she found only Rusty in the kitchen, tail wagging. On the table sat a note in neat handwriting. "Gone to check the north pasture. Back mid-morning. Coffee on the stove. Rest well. CM." She let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stepped outside onto the porch. The view stole her breath. Rolling grasslands stretched into the distance, cattle grazing in peaceful clusters. Mountains stood tall along the horizon, snow still clinging to their peaks. The land felt wide and free, in a way Boston never had. "Maybe this really can be a new beginning," she whispered. Inside again, she pushed up her sleeves and got to work, determined to be useful. She scrubbed, swept, and organized until the house nearly shone. By the time she was kneading bread dough, she heard a horse approaching. Carrick dismounted with smooth ease, dust on his boots, sun in his hair. He walked toward the house, wiping his brow, and the sight of him sent a strange flutter through her chest. She didn't understand it, but she didn't fight it either. When he stepped inside, he paused at the transformed kitchen. "You've been busy," he said, surprised. "I hope you don't mind," she replied. "I want to be helpful." "Mind?" His voice softened. "It looks better than it has in years." She noticed then the small sadness in his eyes, a shadow that passed quickly. He didn't elaborate, and she didn't press him. Over breakfast, they spoke about simple things. Weather, chores, town. As sunlight filled the room, the uneasy tension of yesterday slowly faded. Amelia felt herself relaxing in his presence, something she hadn't expected to happen so soon. "Would you like a tour of the ranch today?" Carrick asked. "It's important you know the land, if you still decide to stay." She hesitated just a moment, then nodded. "Yes. I'd like that." Rusty bounded ahead as Carrick walked with her across the property. He pointed out the spring that never ran dry, the corral, the cattle pastures, the old smokehouse he planned to replace. When he spoke about the ranch, his voice carried a quiet pride that made her smile. "You've built all this alone?" she asked. "Mostly. Had help when it counted." Neighbors pitch in for big work. Out here, people survive by holding each other up. She admired that. Boston had been the opposite. Everyone pretending, hiding, competing, judging. Here, people seemed to help each other because they understood how hard life could be. When they reached the corral, Carrick introduced her to Daisy, a gentle Palomino mare. "She's yours if you decide to stay," he said. "Why do you assume I can't ride?" she asked lightly. He blinked. "Can you?" "My grandfather had a farm outside Boston. I spent my summers there. I'm not a cowgirl, but I can manage." Carrick smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. "I stand corrected," he said. "There's more to you than I guessed." "And more to you," she answered before she could stop herself. For a moment, neither of them looked away. Something warm and quiet passed between them. Not love, but not nothing. By afternoon, dark clouds gathered in the western sky. A storm rolled in fast, forcing them inside. While the rain drummed on the roof, Carrick built a fire. They sat near it, the glow soft on their faces. He showed her his account books, explaining the ranch finances with surprising trust. "Most men wouldn't share this with a woman," she said. "I want us to be partners," he replied simply. "If you stay, this is your home too." The word home settled somewhere deep inside her. That evening, they cooked supper together. Their movements slowly synchronized in the small kitchen. When their hands brushed, Carrick cleared his throat and stepped back. Amelia pretended not to notice the way his face reddened slightly. Later, as the storm rumbled across the plains, Amelia lay awake in her room, thinking. 2 days ago, she'd believed her life was ending. Now she wasn't so sure. The next morning, Carrick surprised her by suggesting they go into town. "You'll need proper things," he said. "And you should meet the townsfolk. They'll want to welcome you." Amelia's stomach knotted at the thought of strangers judging her, but she trusted Carrick, and she couldn't hide at the ranch forever. When they reached Willow Creek, people greeted Carrick with warmth and cheer. He introduced her proudly at every stop: the general store, the seamstress, the cafe. The town was small, but friendly. No one whispered behind her back. No one looked at her with suspicion like in Boston. They looked at her like she belonged. Mrs. Wilson at the general store smiled wide. "So you're the woman who finally got Carrick Montgomery to settle down. Honey, this whole town's been waiting for him to find a bride." Amelia blinked. "I didn't know he had that many admirers." "Oh, he does," Mrs. Wilson said with a laugh. "Plenty of girls tried catching his eye. That man never noticed. Always too busy working." Amelia looked across the store at him. Tall, steady, talking to the blacksmith about repairs. Why had he chosen a bride from so far away? When Amelia and Carrick sat together at the cafe for lunch, she finally asked him, "Why didn't you court someone here?" Carrick paused, his jaw tightening just a little. "I was engaged once," he said quietly, "before the war. When I came back, I wasn't the same." She ended the engagement, said she wanted the man I used to be. Amelia's heart softened for him. "I didn't want to go through that again," he continued. "Didn't want someone expecting me to be something I'm not." He looked directly at her. "You showed up exactly as you were, tears and all. I think maybe that was better than any perfect first impression." Her breath caught. He didn't say anything more. He didn't have to. Something between them shifted, and she felt it settle into place. As they left town later that day, riding side by side toward the ranch, the wind warm at their backs, Amelia realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was beginning to feel safe. Safe with him, safe on this land, safe in a future she hadn't expected to want. The morning of the wedding came with soft light drifting through Amelia's window. She stood in front of the small mirror, hands shaking slightly as she pinned up her hair. Her new cornflower blue dress, a gift from the seamstress in town, fit her perfectly. Behind her reflection, the room glowed warm and calm, a quiet reminder that her life had changed faster than she ever imagined. A gentle knock sounded on her door. "Amelia?" Carrick's voice came through, low but steady. "Are you ready?" She opened the door, and the breath caught in her throat. Carrick stood there in his best suit, dark wool jacket pressed, white shirt clean, his beard neatly trimmed. He looked handsome, but more than that, he looked hopeful. "You look beautiful," he said softly. "And you look very handsome," she replied, her cheeks warming. He shifted slightly, nervous. "I have something for you." From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet pouch. Inside was a delicate gold ring with a tiny diamond set in the center. "It was my mother's," he said. "I'd like you to wear it, if you want to." Her eyes softened. "I'd be honored." The church in Willow Creek was full when they arrived. Neighbors squeezed together in the wooden pews, smiles and whispers filling the small room. People who barely knew her welcomed her with warm nods and friendly greetings. Amelia felt her pulse race as she stepped into the aisle, but Carrick's hand closed around hers, grounding her. The ceremony was simple. Heartfelt vows. A prayer. And then, "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher said. "Carrick, you may kiss your bride." Carrick hesitated, silently asking permission with his eyes. Amelia gave a small nod. The kiss was soft and tender, a promise spoken without words, the church filled with warm applause. Afterward, the Brennan family hosted them for Sunday dinner. Martha Brennan hugged Amelia tight the second she walked through the door. "Welcome to the family, dear," she said. "Carrick's been alone too long." "You're exactly what he needed." The meal was lively, filled with stories of ranch life and laughter over old memories. Amelia felt like she'd stepped into a world she never knew she needed. A world where she wasn't judged, but welcomed. By the time they returned to the ranch, the sun had dipped low over the plains. Carrick helped her down from the horse, his hands lingering at her waist. "Well, Mrs. Montgomery," he said quietly, "welcome home." A soft warmth filled her chest. "Thank you, Mr. Montgomery." Before she could take a step, Carrick swept her into his arms. She gasped, surprised. "Tradition," he said, carrying her across the threshold. "For good luck." Inside, he set her down gently. The house felt different now, not just his home, but theirs. "Amelia," he said, voice low and unsure, "I don't expect anything from you tonight, not unless you want." She placed her hand on his chest, stopping him. "I want to be your wife in every way," she whispered. "I want this life with you." His breath caught. Then he leaned down and kissed her again, deeper this time. They spent their first night together in the quiet warmth of their small home. Learning each other, trusting each other, beginning a marriage built not on perfection, but on truth. Days turned into weeks as they found their rhythm. Amelia learned the rhythms of ranch life, feeding the chickens, tending the garden, helping with chores. Carrick taught her how to milk the cow, how to ride across the ridge without losing her seat, how to check the fences after a storm. In the evenings, they sat beside the fire, reading or talking about small things that somehow felt important. Their connection deepened in ways Amelia had never experienced. This wasn't the rigid, cold life she'd known in Boston. This was real. One afternoon, just as spring touched the air, Carrick rode up to the house with urgent steps. "Mail came in," he said, handing her a letter. Her heart sank when she saw the handwriting, her younger sister. She opened it quickly. Her sister wrote about her own engagement, about dresses, about the latest gossip in Boston, and then, almost as a passing note, added, "Most people hardly remember the rumors about you now. A banker ran off with stolen money, so the town has something new to talk about." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "All that pain," she whispered, "my whole life turned upside down, just because people needed something to talk about." Carrick sat beside her on the porch, gently taking her hand. "It brought you here," he said softly. She looked up at him, surprised. "If Boston hadn't pushed you out," he continued, "you never would have come west. You never would have answered my advertisement. You never would have been here with me." A tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness this time, but from understanding. "You're right," she said. "I'm grateful for it now." The seasons changed. Amelia built friendships in Willow Creek, joining the ladies, group at the church, She helped plan a harvest festival. She baked pies that became the talk of town. Carrick watched her transform the house into a warm, welcoming home. Sewing curtains, planting flowers, arranging books in neat rows. He caught himself smiling more often, laughing at things he didn't think he still knew how to laugh at. One evening, sitting by the fire, Amelia set aside her mending and looked at him. "Carrick," she said softly, "I love you." His breath stilled. She continued, voice trembling, "I didn't expect it. I didn't look for it. But I love you." Carefully, he cupped her face in his hands. "I love you too, Amelia," he whispered, "more than I ever thought I could." Their kiss that night was full of quiet promise. Months later, on a warm spring evening, Amelia placed Carrick's hand on her stomach, her eyes glowing in the firelight. "We're going to have a baby," she said. His eyes widened, filling with wonder and joy. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close as if he never wanted to let go. A family, a future, a life built from a moment of tears on a dusty station platform. And through it all, Carrick held to the same promise he made her on that first day. "You don't have to pretend with me." She never did. And together, they built a home where truth, partnership, and love grew stronger every day.